this request for funding. We were lucky enough to get a lot of money when it comes to our budget of Ways and Means this fiscal year. So we are really wanting to give it like as much as we can away, because we basically want to give it back to the students that they gave it to us. Hello everyone, I'm Kevin Leon-Martinez. I am currently one of the 2 senators for the College of Urban Affairs. I am also honored to serve as the chair of Ways and Means Committee. Yeah, that's what I've been doing so far in CSUN. Pretty exciting. So Ways and Means, basically, it's kind of like the committee that's in charge of like the CSUN funds and like where the funds go to and how are they reallocated. One of the things that we're in charge is overseeing like budget reallocations. So like at the beginning of every fiscal year, we oversee like the budget reallocations, which is like basically the money that CSUN as a whole works from, and basically that money is taken from student fees. And also the other side of Ways and Means, which is the one that people usually are more in contact with, is funding RSOs. One of our duties, probably one of the biggest duties, is funding RSOs directly. So even though CSUN uses money from student fees, we also give money back most of the time. Mostly like that's what we do as an organization. And I feel like Ways and Means is one of like the most direct ways of the organization to do so, because we do fund a lot of money back to the RSO and therefore back to the student population. So as I mentioned previously, Ways and Means basically like one of the most direct ways the CSUN has to like return money back to the students. One of the things we do the best is funding RSOs, as I mentioned. With that, we allow RSOs to like grow as an organization on campus. We also serve as a support mechanism for them financially. If they have questions about like how to operate like within banking accounts, like how the treasurer should follow, we also can provide that as well, that support for them as long as they request it, of course. We also have budget templates on the Involvement Center that RSOs can use, just kind of like to set up their own templates, which is also one of the things that they have to use to apply for funding anyways. So I feel like one of the best things that Ways and Means does outside of like budget reallocation, like overseeing fundings, is funding RSOs. I feel like that's one of like our core duties as a committee, and that's one of the best things CSUN can offer, because it's basically us funding the actual students for their own benefits. So there are a few things that counts for eligibility. I'm actually going to read it straight from the operating policy, which is the document that we operate from. So I highly encourage every RSO that's requesting for funding to always look at this document, because like within this document is the things that we fund, we don't fund, how we fund stuff, and basically just how we operate as a committee. So always when you're creating a budget, I always encourage RSO to base it on this, so there's no issue in the future of like coming before the committee basically. But basically the eligibility for a student organization, of course, first of all, they have to be an official Racer RSO within the Involvement Center. They also must have the funds that we give to RSOs has to be distributed to undergraduate students. So since basically CSUN operates from undergraduate student fees, all the money that we give back has to go to undergraduate students. So basically all the funds that an RSO requests has to go for undergraduate students or for the benefit of undergraduate students. Examples of this like shirts or like speakers or like events, the money exactly is not going to the undergraduate students, but it's going for the benefit of the undergraduate students. So that's one of the key things that we always are very like on top of it, because we want the undergraduate student, which is the one that funds us basically, to get the full benefit of like the investment basically on our organization. The next thing is RSOs must be an NC Racer supplier form. If you don't know, always reach out to Ways and Means UNLV.edu. I'm always free to like help RSOs through the process, because it could be a very intimidating process at first. Basically, an RSO, that's just them proving they are associated with NC, and like without that, we cannot give them funds. They also need to have an EIN number, which is a banking account number for taxes purposes. Also, usually who are like supported by university, by a university account, will provide the organization's program code instead of being an NC Racer supplier code. So basically, some RSOs might be like sponsored by a department or by the university itself, and they can always give that code that the department or university gives them, and that's like a more direct way of doing it. Also, the person who applies for the funding, basically, like the one who like sends the application, has to be an undergraduate student. It cannot be a graduate student. It must have at least 5 members, since like to be an RSO, basically you have to have a minimum of 5 members. There are some exceptions that the Involvement Center provides to certain RSOs with like marginalized populations that we also take into account. So as long as you register on the Involvement Center, we also provide funding basically. Also, must have at least one undergraduate member on the executive board. So we should just encourage that to be that member, the one who applies for the funding, since they're already on the executive board and they already know what's going on behind the scenes. And also, like, the application process is very straightforward because like it's very detailed within the Involvement Center, and they have to apply to the Involvement Center. They cannot just send an email to us and it's like, hey, I want funding. No, they have to go through that application process within the Involvement Center because it's set for that reason alone. Must utilize the budget template provided to the committee's website. So basically, within the Involvement Center, it also gives the budget templates that I was mentioning about. So even if you don't want to request for funding, you can always use those templates just for like the structure of your RSO itself. It must provide a reservation summary for the student union. So in case an RSO wants to create an event within SUS, which is the organization that handles events within UNLV, they must provide that reservation quote, basically saying, hey, we are requesting this room and this is how much it's going to cost, which also leads to the next part. Everything on the budget needs to have the appropriate quotes. We cannot have anything on the budget that doesn't have a quote followed up to it. Usually RSOs have to submit 2 different documentations, which is the budget. We also request RSOs to itemize the budget as best as they can. But having a very itemized budget basically tells the committee and the Senate as a whole where every single penny is gonna go to. Like, it doesn't leave room for guessing, because we also we are very fiscally responsible as a committee. That's part of our duty, and as a Senate. So we really want to know where the money is gonna be used for, and then the quotes basically like the proof that this item costs this amount of money. Organizations are only allowed to request for funding once per fiscal year. I know in previous committee sessions it was done it could be done on a semester basis, like one per semester, but like as of now we're operating on like once per fiscal year. Each RSO is allowed a certain amount of money, which is also in the operating policy under funding limits. That's why I always encourage RSOs to build their own budgets through that documentation. Basically, we have three tier limits when it comes to funding. If an RSO is between 5, which is like the minimum in case you're a marginalized community, then it will be less than that, to up to 25 members. Usually the funding cap for that is $3,525. Between 26 and 70 members, we usually just multiply that number of members times $141, and that's basically the max cap that RSO is eligible for. And then the tier 3, which is from RSOs that have more than 71 members, they're allowed to request for up to $10,000. I do want to clarify that the numbers that we basis are the numbers that are shown in the Involvement Center. We cannot act on just guest numbers or like guest members, like that's the number that we based on, unless it depends on a case-by-case basis, because I know some RSOs may have like different operation where some of the members might show as hidden or like are not like the one to provide the information on the Involvement Center, depending on the RSO that it is. So when it comes to the situation, we always trust the RSO to give us like an approximate number of how many members they have. But yeah, that's like the overall eligibility. It's a lot process because we want to be as thorough as we can and as fiscally responsible as we can. But all that I've said is basically on the operating policy. Again, so if you want to always to check it out in the future, I highly encourage to go on the operating policy, which is within the application form on the Involvement Center. So an RSO usually has to present twice, once in front of the Ways and Means Committee meeting, and if approved, to the Senate. Basically, presentations are not like as strict as the funding application is. Basically, an RSO can always show up to the committee. It depends, like they can have up to, I want to say, 4 or 5 presenters. So we don't really want to have too many presenters per RSO because we are in a limited space, and we don't want to be too crowded, because per agenda there's more than one RSO presenting, so we don't want to have a full room. So we always kind of like ask RSOs to have a minimum of 5, a maximum of 5 members per presentation. And it's basically the presentation is very free. It's always up to the RSO, however they want to formulate it. If they want to go straight to the budget and just like tell line by line what they're requesting and what's going to be used for. If they want to have a presentation on a PowerPoint about like what the RSO is, what the fund is going to use for, what the mission plan of the RSO is, what they've done in the past, they are more than welcome to do that as well. After that, they get approved or they don't get approved by the committee. If they do get approved by the committee, they go up to the Senate. Ways and Means meetings are every Tuesday at 6 p.m. on the third floor of the SU, room 313. And then the Senate meetings are every Monday, second floor of the SU, room 208 B and C. So it's a different floor. But basically, RSOs, but in the way that it's formatted, RSOs present on that Tuesday of 1 week, and then the following Monday, they're already presenting to the Senate. The Senate format's similar to Ways and Means, but it's usually most of the time less questions because they already answered plenty of questions through Ways and Means, and sometimes when a senator asks a question, usually the committee itself can answer it because we already got the answer from the presenters themselves. But it's basically the same process. They give a small presentation, they get approved, and then after that, they get the funding. I do want to say that there's 3 different ways for an RSO to get funding, which is direct deposit if they have a PG number, or if they want to do checking. The PG number is basically a department number. So if an RSO is sponsored by a department, again, they usually have that account information. They can always provide that number. Basically, that's the fastest way to get funding because it's basically from like the CSUN department to that department. It can take like between 1 to 3 days to get the funding. The next quickest way to get funding is direct deposit. Direct deposit usually takes between 1 to 2 weeks max to get the funding. So that's like the most general way, since like a lot of RSOs don't have the ability to be sponsored by a department. The third one, which we don't really recommend that much because it takes up to between 1 to 2 months, is checking. So we always recommend RSOs to either, if they have the PG number, always give that number, but if they don't, always choose direct deposit. But yeah, that's kind of like how the process of like presentations and the ways to get the funding operates, basically. It's on the operating policy, like the things that we fund and we don't fund. So that's gonna give you an idea. For example, if you just need money for something, you can always look at that document and say like, oh, maybe we should request this or not. Usually the most popular thing the RSO requests is marketing things. Like one of the things that I've seen come the most is canopy tents for like the involvement fair, tablecloth, t-shirts, like business card, flyers and stuff like that. We also fund travel and like registrations, but we do only fund us up to 50%. We don't fund the full amount of money because that would be like way too much money to be giving away to one RSO, which is not bad, but it's not like as fiscally responsible because the way we operate is that we just want to give as much money to everyone as we can, not just to a small number of RSOs. So basically, we do fund travel, we do fund lodging, and we do fund hotel reservations, but all of those things are within 50%. Again, that is within the operating policy as well, like those limitations that we have. But I want to say, like, yeah, the most common things that RSOs request is marketing stuff. Some RSOs request for an events that they might have, again, like the SUS reservation. But yeah, most of the time it's just marketing stuff, just to expand the RSO. They might request also for like materials for marketing, for like, for example, a camera or like a printer or stuff like that. So those are just like the things that we see the most come up. This might sound cliche, but like for me, the proudest moment is once an RSO gets approved by the Senate, which is the final step of approving. I don't know, I just feel like being able to give them the fund that they request for is just very fulfilling, because like the mentality that I always have when it comes to Ways and Means is like, because we usually see RSOs like once or like I guess twice when they request, but we never know like how the impact that funding will get to the RSO itself. And we only see 1 to 5 people per RSO, and like some RSOs have like more than 100 members. So we never really grasp the impact that that funding has to the overall student population just by funding one RSO. So that's just something that like makes me really proud of being Ways and Means, and what I feel like why Ways and Means is so important and crucial when it comes to CSUN is the fact that we're able to give so much to the student like in a direct way. So that's just for me. That's like every single Monday, once we approve on a budget and like an RSO gets our funding, that's just like it makes the whole meeting worth it. And Senate meetings can go pretty long too, so it's a lot to say. If you have any questions, always reach out to Ways and Means at UNLV.edu with whatever questions you have at any time. I will always try to reply as fast as I can. If you have any questions about like formatting or setting up a bank account or like to get an NC resource supply form, always reach out. I have the connections necessary to like guide you and connect you with those people who are like a more experienced in those fields outside of myself, because like I'm not that experienced when it comes to legal documentations. So I will always direct you to someone who can like guide you through it. What else? But yeah, overall, just apply for funding. I'll always try to push Ways and Means as much as I can as a chair. I don't want to push in too much, of course, but like I just want to have as many RSOs apply as they can. And basically, we don't work on a timeline schedule per se. As long as we have money to give, we're gonna be seeing RSOs. We do slow down, or we, I guess, in a way, stop during the summer, because like another process that Ways and Means does that a lot of RSOs are not aware is we do receipt collection. So towards beginning of summer and the spring, we kind of stop operations when it comes to RSO funding, because we have to like collect all the receipts from all the RSOs that we've already funded, because we have to verify that everything that was spent, that was funded, basically was spent on the right things. I also want to mention that for RSOs, that whenever you request for money, that money has to go for that exact thing that you requested for. One example of this could be if an RSO requests for 100 shirts and they're requesting for like $500 for it, for the 100 shirts, but between the time they got approved by the Senate and the time they actually buy the shirts, the price changes. Instead of using the full $500, they only use half of it. Half of that money has to go back to Ways and Means. We don't really allow RSOs to just like redistribute the money themselves, because basically we don't have authority on like with that money, basically, because that's free money basically that we cannot control. It's not fiscally responsible for us to just be lending money around that can be used for another RSO. On the other hand, if they underestimated the amount of money, and like by the time they buy the thing, the prices increases, instead of being 500, it's 520. Those $20 sadly have to come from the RSO themselves, since like the money that we approved was the $500. So I just want to make sure the RSOs are aware that any money discrepancy, it can either have to go to Ways and Means back if there's any money left, or if there's like shortage of money, it has to come from the RSO. So I always advise RSO when they're buying stuff, requesting stuff from like online website like Amazon, they kind of like take into account that, and just maybe go for request like a little bit higher than the actual number on it, in case the price varies, and always take into account the taxes or shipping and stuff like that. But yeah, that's something I really wanted like to mention to RSOs, because like you never know like where the price is gonna be. But yeah, during beginning of summer and ish of spring, we do receipt collection, and that's like we basically take the whole summer for that. That's also when we take time to like review and oversee the budget reallocation for the new fiscal year. But then we come back to fall and we start strong again. I do want to mention actually that before winter break, like a week or two, Ways and Means does just ceases operations again, because basically, for those who don't know, CSUN, the legislative elections happening in November, and basically we have like a whole new Senate with a whole new members, so we have to like train them all, and then we have winter break after that. So Ways and Means have always kind of like ceased operations during that time, just for the purpose of training the committee, and just even if you're approved by Ways and Means, let's say on the last week of winter break, since there won't be no school and therefore no Senate meeting through the whole winter break, you won't be able to get funding anyways until like January. So we usually slow down or like even cease operations overall during that time. But other than those two periods, Ways and Means like always every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. Yeah, that's all that I have. Like, please request for funding.